Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session, Honoring Indigenous Writers, Engaging Communities and Transforming Wikipedia. My name is Erin Fields. I am the Open Education and Scholarly Communications Librarian at UBC Vancouver. And Donna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Donna Langell, and I'm the Community Engagement Librarian at UBC Okanagan.
So before we begin today, I'd like to acknowledge that UBC, which is hosting, which we both work at, is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. The UBC Okanagan campus is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Syilx and Okanagan peoples. As we are working virtually today, I'd like to acknowledge that here in the Lower Mainland, we are often on unceded territories of many Coast Salish peoples, and outside of this area, we may also be on traditional lands of many different Indigenous peoples. So when I acknowledge being on the territory of the Musqueams and Syilx people, it is rooted in an understanding that I, as a member of the UBC community, am privileged to be working on these territories that are not my own. Additionally, as someone who works on the topic of open education, I also like to acknowledge that much of open education is grounded in Western notions of copyright law and ownership. And these notions can be in tension with Indigenous and traditional ways of knowing. So while we're not really exploring that tension today, it's important that we recognize that it exists. So today for our agenda, we're going to be talking about the origins of honoring Indigenous writers, our Wikipedia editathon. We're going to talk about how we work in good faith with Indigenous communities in the editathon, as well as the kind of community connections we've been able to build over the past 2 years of offering this session. We will talk a little bit about the challenges involved in editing Wikipedia, but also how you can get involved. This is very much something that we started in UBC Vancouver, but has grown since then, and we would like to see it to continue to grow. So in 2018, I was partnering with Dr. David Gartner, who is a professor in the First Nations and Indigenous Studies program at UBC, on Wikipedia-based assignments in his class. And the assignment was very successful. The students identified and addressed important gaps in Wikipedia related to Indigenous topics across many subjects. And from this initial course, we discussed the possibility of expanding the work outside of the classroom for Open Education Week in March 2019. So we discussed the idea of an editathon, but needed to focus in on a topical area that could have some very positive impacts. So David introduced me to the work of Daniel Heath Justice, who is a professor of English at UBC and the Canadian Research Chair in Indigenous Literature and Expressive Culture. And he wrote a book called Why Indigenous Literatures Matter and in that book, he wrote about a Twitter campaign where every day for a year, he tweeted about an Indigenous author. And the reason for his work was due to conversations he was having where Indigenous people, or where people would fail to know about the breadth and scope of Indigenous literatures. And he said the reason for the campaign was to push back against the frequent assumption that their literary history is any less complex, robust, or diverse than of other people's. So building upon his work seemed like an impactful way to increase the awareness of Indigenous authors and literatures. The Indigenous Writers Wikipedia Editathon was then created to improve the coverage of Indigenous writers on Wikipedia and to encourage diverse community editors to actively work to dissuade assumptions about Indigenous literature by raising the profile in Wikipedia, which is increasingly becoming a very ubiquitous source of information. So moving on, we're going to talk about working in good faith, and I'm going to turn it over to Donna.
Thanks, Erin. So before the first Wikipedia editathon, the authors had many discussions on how to ensure, or the organizers had many discussions on how to ensure that they were working in good faith with Indigenous writers. So at the core of their discussions was the desire to ensure that the project respected cultural integrity and to ensure Indigenous perspectives and experiences guided their decision-making process. So during event preparation, the organizers contacted each writer by email to inform them of the event and also to ask their consent to edit or create their Wikipedia articles. They were also asked what kind of information they would like to see included or represented in the article, and if a writer declined or did not respond, the organizers removed their name from the editing list. The template for this email is available in the organizing toolkit, which we will share at the end of our presentation. The feedback that the event organizers received was largely positive, and this slide highlights a few responses from some of the writers. So some of the feedback included, I'm grateful for any recognition and new information. Thank you for what you are doing for Indigenous writers and Indigenous women. And what a great project you have in front of you. So now Erin will talk about the safe space policy.
So after the first year of the Editathon, and the first year was actually very successful, the second year of planning for the Wikipedia Editathon, we really wanted to expand the way we framed and ran the space during the event, but also how people engaged with the event online. Specifically, we heard feedback from participants from the previous years about discomfort in writing about Indigenous authors and topics while being outside of the Indigenous community. So we developed the safe space policy, which was meant to address some of the ways we could be present and critical of our work while moving forward. So through the safe space policy, we asked participants to agree to work together, to break down implicit and explicit barriers and biases, not only on Wikipedia, but also within interactions with our fellow editors. It was also a means it also meant we agreed to hold ourselves and others accountable for the ways we either contribute or subtract from that space that we've created. Now, the policy is available in our resources, and it draws from the work of Art and Feminism Wikipedia Editathon, but I would like to specifically identify that during the events, we would address the potential discomfort people would feel working within the space as non-Indigenous editors. And we discussed how the discomfort can be thought of as a positive way to continuously and consciously confront our own biases and accept the fact that we are imperfect, but we are attempting to work within the space in an honest and open manner.
So last year, I worked with Erin to organize an Honoring Indigenous Writers Wikipedia Editathon at the UBC Okanagan campus during Open Education Week. We held the event at the UBC Okanagan Innovation Library. The Innovation Library is a UBC library that's located within the downtown public library. So at this location, we provide research support to community members as well as faculty and students. We decided to host the Editathon at the Innovation Library rather than the campus to encourage more participation from the wider community. We partnered with the public library to use one of their larger event spaces. Oh, and so we were able to promote the event on both the UBC Library social media channels, as well as the Okanagan Regional Library media channels. We also sent emails to the West Bank First Nation, one of the local Indigenous communities, and they promoted the event within their own community. We were also asked to speak about the event on the local CBC radio talk show. So there were many benefits to holding the event in the public library. First, the public library is located in downtown Kelowna, which is the city that the Okanagan campus is located. But the downtown area is a much more central location. So the campus is about a 1-hour bus ride from the city, depending on traffic. So this could create a challenge for some people who rely on public transit. Parking is also much more expensive on campus than it is in the city. And also the public library is already a familiar space for many community members. Another benefit to working with the public library is that they offered us their laptops for the duration of the event for the participants to use. So usually participants are asked to bring their own laptops to the event, but we recognize that this might be a barrier for some members of the community. And then thirdly, the Innovation Library, which provides community members with access to electronic resources from the UBC library, was located only down the hall. So the library was located right there, so we knew that we could use it for advanced research if need be. We had participants from both the community and the university join us, and all of the participants at the UBC Okanagan event were new to editing articles on Wikipedia. We received positive feedback, including one from a community member who was thrilled to have an opportunity to contribute knowledge about the people in her own community. She expressed her desire to take her new Wikipedia editing skills and apply them to other articles about her culture.
So for UBC Vancouver campus, we held the event at the Point Grey campus, and we're able to do some partnerships with the First Nations Longhouse to hold the event in the Stiwaton Great Hall, which is a space that supports UBC Indigenous programming and Aboriginal students. The hall is supported by the 4 posts, all carved by Northwest Coast Indigenous artists. By partnering with the First Nations Longhouse, we were able to get information about the event out to Indigenous communities and partners. Each year we have reached out to Indigenous authors for author readings with honoraria at the event. We've had Sam Knock, Billy Ray Belcourt, Jessica Johns, Dallas Hunt, Jules Kutstachin, as well as we've also invited Daniel Heath Justice to open the event. In addition to these partnerships, we also have invited Iron Dog Books to the event to sell books from Indigenous authors, including all those who were speaking at the event. Iron Dog Books is an Indigenous-owned bookshop and book truck dedicated to bringing low-cost reading to the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam territories. So from this partnership has come some interest from the owners of Iron Dog Books in being more involved in the planning and offering of the event, and we're working on details of what that could look like for this year. We've also had partners with other institutions and departments interested in engaging in the Editathon. BC Campus, the University of Toronto Digital Media Lab, and Stanford University have all hosted their own Editathons. Additionally, at UBC, the School of Information hosted a resource gathering sprint to support the authors of the articles by gathering resource packages for the authors of the articles themselves. So now we just want to talk briefly about some challenges that we face whenever I'm working with Wikipedia, and also highlights the importance of the work that you're doing in that space as it relates to Indigenous topics. First, about notability, people are presumed notable if they've received significant coverage in multiple published secondary sources. And those have to be reliable, intellectual, independent of each other, and independent of the subject. So in order for an article to be maintained, these rules have to apply in terms of notability in Wikipedia. But the issue with this is that these guidelines do reinforce some structural racism, sexism, and some colonial structures around information sources themselves. So a good example of a notability concern was with the author Robert Arthur Alexie. We were working on his article and noticed a flag, a notability flag, which was really confusing. The article at the time was lacking some detail and some citations, but there was some very clear indication of notability, and that should not have been an issue. For example, Arthur Alexie led the Gwich'in delegation at a territories-wide meeting of the Métis and the Dene, and secured over 22,000 square kilometers of land in the Northwest Territories, as well as 1,500 square kilometers in the Yukon for these nations. He also secured in 2002 and was awarded the Queen Elizabeth II's Golden Jubilee Medal for exemplary contribution to his community and to Canada. And if that's not notable, I'm not really sure what notability really is. So if we go back to what makes a person notable, it has everything to do with the number of times a person is discussed in media and research sources. And this is clearly less about the contributions to our communities and to the world, and more about news coverage, which is problematic.
So before I talk, I saw that there was some issue with seeing the slides in the chat. It seems like it switched to presenter view.
Here, I'm gonna stop sharing and I will reshare. Share, and let's see. Is that any better?
That's great, Erin. Well, it is for me. Maybe we'll see if everyone else can see it okay.
Just make sure that we can actually
looking great for me as well, Erin.
Wonderful. Thank you, Erin. So I'm going to talk about the sources that are used. So Wikipedia requires that any information that you add to an article needs to be backed up by a verifiable source. So academic and peer-reviewed publications are usually considered the most reliable, but other sources that are considered include university textbooks, books published by respected publishing houses, magazines, journals, and mainstream newspapers. So one thing that we noticed while editing articles on Indigenous content is that the sources were not fully representative of Indigenous knowledges and perspectives. So for example, the article for the Trans Mountain Pipeline um, shows a list of sources from only popular news companies like Global News and the Financial Post. Even though this section of the article contains information about the members of the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations of British Columbia, none of the sources included in this list are written by Indigenous organizations or communities. So we can decenter whiteness and Western ways of knowing in Wikipedia articles by incorporating sources and citations from Indigenous authors and using sources such as Indigenous newspapers and websites. So the examples on this slide are a few examples of Indigenous-owned sources. One challenge that we face when using these types of sources on Wikipedia is that Indigenous news sources might not look the same as federal or provincial news sources. Also, their reach might be much, much smaller. These are two reasons why these types of sources might get flagged or removed for not being as notable. This is a problem that the Wikipedia community needs to address and challenge. So we're going to conclude our presentation today by suggesting some ways that you can get involved or organize in honoring Indigenous Writers Wikipedia Editathon at your own institution. So we will be hosting another Wikipedia Editathon this year, although it's going to look a little bit different as it will be a virtual event. We've included a link to our event page on this slide, which we'll also put into the chat. And we'll be adding more information to this event page as we continue planning. If you're interested in hosting your own event, you can download the organizer kit using the link as well. And the kit contains checklists for organizing, including activities that should be done weeks before, the day before, and during and after the event. It also includes email templates for emailing writers, engaging with the media, and informing participants, as well as downloadable logos and posters that you can adapt for your use. Or you can connect with us. So we've included our emails as well. So if you have any questions or would like to get in touch, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. So that is our presentation for today. Thank you so much for being here and listening to us, and we'll answer questions.
I see there's already a question in the chat, Donna and Erin.
So I see that there was a question, do you have any tips for holding a virtual editathon? As I mentioned, we'll put the link into the organizing kit, which Erin helped create, which has a ton of resources available for getting started. That was really helpful for me as someone who came to the project a little bit later and tried to hold one at my own institution. Erin, did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, for holding a virtual editathon, we've been doing a bunch of research. I have some graduate students that are working on this with us to see what would be a good way to approach this in a virtual environment. And hosting a Wikipedia editathon where we're all together in a Zoom room for a few hours is not the way to go. The best solutions are usually kind of tailored out small activities that people can do in the course of a few weeks that engages them in doing something within Wikipedia to improve Wikipedia, but isn't requiring a large time commitment. but having community sessions, moments of where we are pulled together around the exciting pieces of this work. So if we're going to do author readings, that's the point at which we draw together as a community. And once we have that community sense, we pull back out and are able to do the individual pieces of, say, adding a category or improving an article or something like that. That doesn't actually involve us all together in one space, but still involves kind of us considering that work. So for virtual environments, it's about encapsulating all of that into a program without it being, again, doing an edit-a-thon in the traditional sense of us coming into a space together. So I put the links in the chat, but I can throw them in again, of all of that content. So you'll find that for the 2021 Honoring Indigenous Writers right now, that space is a bit empty because we're planning right now, but we have had some conversations of still hosting some Indigenous writers speaking about and doing their work there. We've also thought about having sort of a kind of bingo-ish sort of approach where people can do small things throughout a month that is towards improving Wikipedia. So we'll have more there, but keep checking back.
I just put the links in again for folks if they missed them. I did see a question here. As an English teacher, I struggle to find stories that are written by Indigenous authors. Is there a good place to look?
Starting with Daniel Heath Justice's work, he has 365 authors that he's actually listed inside of his appendices. That was a first perfect start. But I think also reaching out to Indigenous publishers in particular. So there are some Indigenous run publishing companies that would have fantastic sources in terms of where to find Indigenous authors, in particular ones that are local, which I think is extremely important to recognize our local authors. So I think that would be, yeah, thank you, Donna, for sharing that, but that would be a fantastic start. Also following, if you're on Twitter, Honoring Indigenous Writers, the actual hashtag, we use it all year round. So you'll see authors just tweeted about year round about what is going on, what's new.
There's also some great suggestions that have been added to the chat as well.
Great. Just scrolling back to see if there's anything.
I don't think I'm seeing any other questions.
You're all also welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to share your voice in asking a question.
Hello, Manisha.
Yeah, I wanted to say fantastic to see you here.
It's great seeing you.
You look good. I like your background too. Well done, Well done. I always share your work with many people. So.
Oh, that's lovely to hear.
Yes. So Erin is not only speaking about Wikipedia, but she is our open education queen, and she's done a lot of presentations about, where OERs are housed, how to use them, using Merlot and so many other tools which are available.
Geez, I should bring you to all my sessions. You can promote me.
Hey, I'm only promoting gold, huh? Because you are good.
Oh,
awesome.
Thank you.
Well done. I always learn something new,
I
from
noticed
sessions.
a question from Jonas Lamb. Do you know if Wikipedia supports use of TK licenses in addition to the use of CC? I've not seen an integration with TK licenses, honestly, and I haven't heard that there is going to be an integration, but that would be a fantastic next step in thinking about this, especially the sheer value. If you haven't read about traditional knowledge licenses, I highly advise everybody go look it up and read about it. They are just the best way I can describe it, I find them beautiful, quite honestly, a beautiful concept of licensing work, and it's a respectful way of licensing work. Yeah, I have not seen that yet, but it would be an interesting thing to address with Wikipedians to see if there's possibility there.
Well, on that beautiful note, we have actually reached the end of our session. So I will turn the recording off at this time, but please note that you are all welcome to stay here for another 15 minutes to continue this conversation.